What's going on, guys? This is Rob, and as we continue with our series on various characters from the Marvel Cinematic Universe, what we're going to be doing in this video is we're going to be focusing on Captain America, Steve Rogers. Now, what we're going to find is that this video is going to be relatively short, and the reason for that is because unlike a lot of other characters that we see in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Black Widow, Hawkeye, Nick Fury, for the most part with Steve Rogers, what we see in the films is really all we get. The only real exception here is the origin story of how Steve Rogers eventually became Captain America. And so what we find here is that the backstory, that the origin itself is given to us in a 4-part series titled Captain America First Vengeance. And these are basically given to us as comic book tie-ins to Captain America the First Avenger. What we learn here is that Steve Rogers' father had died during World War I before Steve Rogers was born. And as a result, he was raised by his mother. Now, where Steve Rogers demonstrated a desire to join the military at a very young age, what we found was that his mother encouraged his ambition to be a soldier, but also tried to teach him that due to his small stature, due to his small physical form, that not many people would really take him seriously. And so as a result, he would basically have to fight to earn the respect of others, but that his courage was really greater than most men that were out there. And of course, we'll see that come to fruition once we see Steve Rogers actually become Captain America. Now, there also seems to be some indication that perhaps Steve Rogers' mother is dying, or at the very least she's severely ill. It's simply just kind of given to us in terms of her physical appearance. She seems fairly sickly here, and what we'll actually find later on is that she actually dies of tuberculosis. But the fact remains that at some point, Steve Rogers ended up in a fight with some of the neighborhood kids that were basically trying to force Steve Rogers into handing over money. They were basically trying to shake him down, and that as a result, when Steve Rogers and these kids began to get into a fight, we found that Steve Rogers was joined by Bucky Barnes. Now, at this point, Bucky Barnes and Steve Rogers aren't friends yet, and they actually don't know each other. But what we find is that Bucky Barnes is able to chase the bullies away, and so as a result, Bucky Barnes and Steve Rogers immediately become friends. Now, eventually, Bucky Barnes and Steve Rogers enroll in college, and during one of their art courses, Pearl Harbor is attacked by the Japanese. And so the result is that both Bucky and Steve want to enlist in the military, but due to the small stature, again, of Steve Rogers, Bucky thinks there's really not a chance for Steve Rogers to actually be able to enroll in the military, or to actually successfully enlist in the military. And so because of the fact that they are such close friends, what we find is that Bucky basically takes the time to try to teach Steve how to fight, as well as basically how to put on muscle mass so that he can have the kind of stamina and the physical aptitude in order to be a successful soldier. And so what happens is Bucky actually takes Steve Rogers to Goldie's Gym. Now, Goldie's Gym is a gym we've seen before. We actually see this, or we see Steve Rogers working out in this gym when Nick Fury approaches Steve Rogers to try to have him join the Avengers Initiative. Again, just kind of a little tidbit here, a little bit of a I guess an Easter egg of sorts with regards to the comic books and the films tying into one another. But again, the result here is that despite all the work that Steve Rogers and Bucky Barnes put in to try to enhance Steve Rogers, the fact remains that Steve Rogers is turned down, that he's simply not allowed to enlist in the military due to the fact that he's simply just too scrawny. And so what this does is this basically leads us into the very beginning of Captain America, the First Avenger, when we find that during the World's Fair, Steve Rogers sneaks off and tries to enlist in the military, but is ultimately turned down. With that being said, we're going to go ahead and bring this video to an end. Again, I know this video was very short, but like I said, there really aren't a whole lot of tidbits when it comes to Steve Rogers and the Marvel Cinematic Universe. What we see in the movies is really all we get. With that being said, I will catch you guys later. Peace.
I'm standing all by myself in the shadows, surrounded by the silence seeping in. Alone with my thoughts, no one to follow.